Let's go back now to the economy and talk about the news that the economy actually shrank in the last quarter by 0.5%. Well, we can talk to the Shadow Chancellor, Ed Balls, who's in Westminster. Very good of you to join us. Thanks for your time, Mr Balls. So George Osborne, the Chancellor, saying again and again this morning these figures, which he admits are disappointing, are due to the bad weather and that the government will not be blown off course by either the bad weather or these figures. What do you say to that?
I don't think the bad weather should blow George Osborne off course. It's the facts. Look, the independent statistics people have said today the economy has shrunk by 0.5%, but even if you adjust for that, it's zero growth. The fact is the recovery has completely stalled in the last 3 months of last year. This is an economy which was growing in the middle of the year, which is now ground to a halt. We've got inflation going up, unemployment rising, now the economy not growing, and all those boasts from George Osborne and David Cameron that they had secured the recovery, it seems as though the opposite has happened. And this is before, look, let's be clear, the VAT rise in January, the big cuts in public spending this year, that's not really got going yet, and already the cuts from last autumn are starting to impact upon a recovery which is stalled. I think it blows apart George Osborne's complacency. You can't come along and say, the weather's the cause of this, because it's not.
But partly, you would accept that partly there were exceptional factors in that quarter?
Yes, there were. And look, it's only one quarter's figures, so we should be cautious. I hope this trend doesn't continue. That's absolutely what I hope. And it's also the case that the bad weather is partly to blame. But the ONS, the independent statistic experts, say even if you adjust for the bad weather, the economy was flat. Manufacturing's growing, but construction's falling, services falling. The reason is because consumer confidence has been down and people are worrying about the loss of orders, the cancellation of new school building, what's going to happen to their living standards this year, and already that is impacting upon the economy. And look, we always said, to be honest, Richard Lambert said it very well, the head of the CBI last night, simply slamming on the brakes will never work. That is not a credible economic policy. We always needed to keep this economy moving, keep it growing. I'm afraid George Osborne has not done that. And as somebody who was in the Treasury for quite a lot of years, I have to say to George Osborne, don't make up excuses, but also, when you need to make a change, do it quickly. Don't get dug in. This idea is not being blown off course. There is a plan B. There's a better way to do this. I think you should start listening to the views of businesses, of families, of the opposition as well, because this economic plan is not working.
But as you say, you were in the Treasury for a large number of years, and the government are saying that a large part of this is down to what you did, that enormous deficit, that ballooning deficit that they inherited from you. And Nick Clegg the other day was saying you personally, who was whispering in Gordon Brown's ear, budget after budget, creating a huge fiscal deficit. The answer is Ed Balls.
Well, I think Nick Clegg is slightly getting a bit carried away there. We've had the largest global recession for a century, which has impacted upon the growth, the deficits and the unemployment rates of China, of America, of France, of Germany, of Japan. I don't think it was all down to me, but there was a fundamental problem around the world with the financial crisis. But we got through the financial crisis, we got our economy moving by the kind of decisive action to support growth. Go back a year. If I'd been on this programme a year ago, inflation low, unemployment falling, the economy strengthening in the first half of last year, that's all now in reverse. Inflation going up, unemployment going up, the recovery completely stalled. And what is the thing which has changed? A new government which has come in and said, don't support growth, slam on the brakes, cut spending now. These cuts are too deep and too fast. This is not a credible economic policy.
Well, just on deficit reduction, because a lot of people are a little bit confused about exactly where Labour stand on that, because in the Labour leadership campaign, you said that the UK's deficit, you were worried about the idea of halving the deficit in 4 years, and you said that that was a mistake, but now you've changed your mind on that.
Well, I did a speech at the end of August at Bloomberg, which BBC News 24 covered, where we talked about the George Osborne's strategy compared to Labour's view, his desire to accelerate, to go faster, to have bigger spending cuts. I said in that speech, I was really worried what this would do to growth and jobs. It was reckless. I said in that speech that Alistair Darling's plan to half the deficit in 4 years, the plan we fought the election on, that George Osborne was saying was too slow, was deficit denying. I said in that speech that I was worried 2 years before, in 2009, even Alistair's plan risked being too fast. What actually happened was that unemployment came down as a result of his intervention. The growth of the economy accelerated in the first half of last year. That's why, look, if we were in government, we'd be half in the deficit over 4 years, borrowing with 20 billion lower now than we were anticipating a year ago.
So you changed your mind. You changed your mind on that?
No, what I've said is that were we in government, we'd be half in the deficit in 4 years. I was worried 2 years before that it would be too fast. What I'm absolutely clear about is that George Osborne's plans now are much too fast. Slamming on the brakes is reckless and risky, and I think as he approaches the budget...
But you haven't changed your mind on deficit reduction just to present a unified front with Ed Miliband so that he would give you the job of Shadow Chancellor?
Look, we are a unified front, but a week and a half ago at the Shadow Cabinet, before I knew anything about the changes of jobs, when Alan made a presentation to the Shadow Cabinet saying the coalition's cuts were too deep, too fast, and would put jobs and growth at risk, I said I completely backed that strategy. That was a strategy to half the deficit in 4 years. If we were in government, that's what we would be doing. The coalition is going faster. It's a really, really big mistake. And look, I don't resign from anything I said in the autumn. I think that's fully consistent with our election manifesto. It's fully consistent with what we've seen today, which is that George Osborne, a lurch to spending cuts, to deflation. You can't do that and think it will have no impact. The impact is now very clear.
Some people are talking about double dip recession, about stagflation. Are you thinking that those are possibilities now?
Look, when the economy contracts by 0.5%, when the economy is shrinking, when you've got zero growth even after the bad weather effects, of course people are going to worry about those things. I don't think that's by far the most likely outcome. I think the likely outcome is we will see a much, much tougher year in 2011 on growth and on living standards, unless George Osborne listens and changes course. And he should do so quickly. If we're going to have months and months of being told we're not being blown off course, we're carrying on with a strategy which isn't working, that's really, really the wrong approach. And so I hope, to be honest, he'll listen. But I fear we're in for a very, very tough 2011.
Ed Balls, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. Good to talk to you. Ed Balls, Shadow Chancellor.